Hi, it's Diana from Raw Foods Made Simple and a Busy Woman's Guide to Health. And I'm going to show you something today that uses raw ingredients, but then I'm going to bake it in the oven. I happen to love granola bars, and yes, I do make some raw granola bars also. But I want to do this for people who may not have a dehydrator, and I think it is something that is, of course, healthier than buying any type of granola bars that are out there. And you can probably use the same idea using a dehydrator. You would just probably use blended dates instead of what I'm going to use to hold everything together, which is rice syrup. So this is organic rice syrup. It's not very sweet. It kind of looks like a thick honey, but don't let it fool you. It doesn't have the sweetness. So when you put it in something, if you want to add some extra sweetener, then you might want to add some maple syrup or honey or something to it. But if you want to have this just as it is, then you don't need to add any more sweetness. And so what we're going to do is I have some nuts and seeds in here. I'm going to give you the recipe. I have nuts, some almonds, hazelnuts, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds, flaked coconut, and some coconut chunks in here. I usually like to add a few raisins, but I don't have any raisins. You could also add dried apricots or anything like that. I'm going to get some cinnamon, because I forgot that. I like to add a bit of cinnamon to my granola bars too, so I'm just going to sprinkle some in. You can add about, a teaspoon or two. Depends on how much you like cinnamon. If you don't like any, don't add any. And I'm going to add a bit of maple syrup too, just for a bit of flavor and a little bit of extra sweetness to it. I'm just going to stir it up. So these are so easy to make. It really doesn't matter how much of any of the ingredients you put in here, because you're going to get it to a consistency, and that's the most important thing. You're going to be looking for a specific consistency. So I have a little bit of rice syrup left in here that I'm going to pour in and just get rid of this jar. So I know that I'm going to need at least probably a half a cup of rice syrup. So just by how much I have in the bowl. So you'll get to know that too. Start small. Start with a quarter cup, let's say. Add tablespoon by tablespoon until you come to the proper consistency, which I will show you when I get there. So I have a quarter cup here. I know I'm going to need another quarter cup for sure. So that's why I'm putting a full quarter cup in right now. And this stuff is like honey. It's very thick and very sticky. Of course, if you add too much of this and your mixture is just too wet, then you just have to add more nuts or seeds. I took the big nuts like my hazelnuts and almonds, and I ground them a bit in the food processor to chunk them down so they're not like full-size pieces. But you can use a cutting board or a knife if you don't have a food processor. So, as you take a look at this, it's getting into bigger chunks as I stir. But I see when I'm stirring and I'm squishing the mixture, it's still too dry. You want this to be able to stick together on a cookie sheet. I have this cookie sheet lined with parchment paper. So you need it sticky enough to stick to a cookie sheet, to all bind together. So I'm going to add, like I told you, a tablespoon at a time. So I know this isn't going to be enough. So you would add a tablespoon, stir, add a tablespoon, stir. And that's what I'm just doing right now. I'm adding a full other tablespoon. Right now I probably have about a half a cup in here. So what you could do also is you could get your hands in there and use your hands and squish it around to get everything mixed really well. I might do that after, but first of all, I'm just going to show you what the consistency should be like. And you bake these in the oven at about 300 to 325, depending on your oven. You don't need parchment paper, but I like it just so it's an easy cleanup. And what's going to happen is that they're going to cook on the outside. So what you do is you take the ones that are cooked on the outside, the squares, cut them off, and then leave the middle, which is going to be softer. Put it back in the oven until those are cooked better too. So I think I'll need about 1 to 2 more tablespoons. So once you lay this on your cookie sheet, You can score it then, as in make squares, or put it in the oven for about 15 to 20 minutes till it hardens up a bit. Then cut it into squares and then put it back in the oven. And like I said, you're going to watch it probably a half an hour or more. And then when it starts to brown on the edges and you think the edges are cooked well enough, you remove those edge pieces and continue cooking the middle pieces. Because it will stay, how would I say, not as well cooked in the middle, and it will cook faster on the edges. Okay, this looks like pretty good consistency, so move this stuff aside. Now, it's not too much of a big deal if you don't put enough rice syrup in here. What will happen is that this will be more like granola. It just won't stick, your granola bars just won't stick together as well, but they'll still be really good and you'll be able to eat it as a snack. So here you can see it's really chunky and sticking together on my spoon a lot. So I'm just going to move everything and lay it out on a cookie sheet. What I have is just water in the cup here and a spatula. Dip the spatula in water because this is what you're going to be doing to spread it. So I'm just going to show you a little bit. I'm just going to dump a bit out onto here. You can always test it to see if it's sticky enough by dumping a bit onto your sheet, pressing it down and seeing if it sticks well enough. If not, throw it back in the bowl and add more stickiness. Okay. So, you don't want it too thin and you don't want it too thick. If it's too thick, it's going to be really hard to bite after and take a long time to cook. If it's too thin, it's just going to crumble. So I would say this is maybe half an inch, something like that. So what you do is I like you pressing it along the sides first and then patting it down nice and well. And when your spatula gets too sticky, just stick it into the water. And then you'll see it doesn't stick and it's much easier to press it onto the cookie sheet. So that is all. This is all it takes. And like I said, score it before you put it in the oven, or about 15 minutes once it's been in there. And then as it cooks, you're going to be taking off the pieces that cook faster and leaving in the pieces back in the oven that do not cook as fast until they're all perfectly done. That's as easy it is to make your own granola bars. Thank you, and I'll have the recipe on my blog.